Every year, the wellness world sells another miracle powder. A new green, a new extract, a new cure in a plastic tub. But while we are paying premiums for imported superfoods, a simple backyard tree quietly outperformed nearly all of them. Moringa. Leaves with more calcium than milk, more iron than spinach. Complete protein in a leaf. A tree that fed families for 4,000 years through droughts and scarcity, long before supplements had names. Yet most people today have never tasted it. Why did moringa, a plant this powerful, almost disappear from modern food? And how did something so nutritious slip out of everyday diets without us noticing? To answer that, we need to step back into the world that replaced it. Walk into any health store, and you will find them. Spirulina from distant lakes. Acai shipped frozen across oceans. Matcha packaged in sleek containers. Each one promising what modern diets have stripped away: nutrients, energy, vitality. The superfood industry generates billions annually selling the idea that wellness must be imported, processed, and expensive. Marketing departments craft stories of exotic origins and ancient secrets, but long before influencers promoted powdered greens, long before supplements lined pharmacy shelves, a leafy plant was doing something quietly extraordinary. It grew in backyards. It required no shipping containers. It asked for almost nothing and delivered nutrition that rivaled or surpassed the most celebrated health foods combined. Calcium levels exceeding dairy. Iron content beating spinach. Complete protein from a leaf. This was not a laboratory creation. This was a tree, one that had sustained communities through droughts, famines, and centuries of hardship. And yet somehow, as the modern world searched frantically for nutritional solutions, this plant faded into obscurity. The question is not whether it worked. The question is why something so powerful was allowed to disappear from everyday tables while inferior alternatives took its place. It was not always forgotten. Once, it was everywhere. In the foothills of the Himalayas, moringa was already ancient when written language began. Vedic texts from 3,000 years ago describe its healing properties. The name itself comes from the Tamil word murungai, meaning twisted pod. But to understand what moringa truly was, you have to forget everything the wellness industry has told you. This was never a supplement. It was never a trend. It was breakfast. In villages across South Asia, Africa, and Central America, moringa trees grew in backyards, along fence lines, beside water sources. Families harvested leaves the way others picked tomatoes. No ceremony, no special occasion, just daily nourishment. In Senegal, they call it nebede, meaning never die. In Nigeria, zogale. In the Philippines, malunggay. Each name carried centuries of knowledge. Each culture understood the same truth. This tree did not require wealth or infrastructure to deliver nutrition. It simply grew. And wherever hunger existed, moringa was waiting. The question is why that knowledge stayed hidden from the rest of the world. Most food plants force a choice: harvest the fruit and lose the seed. Take the root and kill the plant. But moringa offered something different. The leaves were the treasure, and taking them destroyed nothing. A moringa tree can be cut back to a stump and return with new branches within weeks. Farmers learn to harvest young leaves continuously, sometimes every 2 weeks throughout the growing season. The tree responded not with death, but with abundance. One planting could feed a family for decades. In intensive systems, trials in Nicaragua measured 500 metric tons of fresh leaves per hectare per year. No replanting, no buying new seed, just a cycle of cutting and regrowth that never ended. This was not agriculture in the industrial sense. It was a partnership with a living system that gave more the more it was asked. The leaves came tender and bright green, ready to cook into stews, dry into powder, or eat raw in salads. They required no complex preparation, and what those leaves contained would eventually shock researchers who had spent careers studying nutrition. The numbers are difficult to overstate. According to USDA data, 100 grams of fresh moringa leaves contain approximately 185 milligrams of calcium. A cup of whole milk contains around 125 milligrams per 100 grams. Gram for gram, moringa leaves deliver more calcium than milk. Fresh moringa leaves contain 4 milligrams of iron per 100 grams. Raw spinach, the vegetable synonymous with iron, contains 2.7 milligrams. Moringa carries nearly 50% more iron than spinach by weight. Dried and powdered, these concentrations multiply dramatically. Some analyses show over 2,000 milligrams of calcium per 100 grams of dried leaf powder. But the leaves offer more than minerals. They contain all 9 essential amino acids, making moringa a complete protein. That is rare in the plant kingdom. Most vegetables lack at least one essential amino acid. Moringa lacks none. There are roughly 25 grams of protein per 100 grams of dried leaf. Vitamin A at levels exceeding carrots. Vitamin C rivaling oranges. B vitamins, potassium, magnesium, and potent antioxidants are all present. This was not a supplement formulated in a laboratory. This was ordinary food, growing on a tree in someone's yard. No factory required. No patent pending. That distinction matters deeply. Speed defines survival in regions where the next meal is uncertain. Most crops demand months of waiting, careful irrigation, protection from pests. Moringa defied every rule. Plant a seed in fertile soil, and within 60 days the first leaves can be harvested. In tropical climates, trees grow 3 to 5 meters in a single year. Some varieties reach 7 meters when left unchecked. But height was not the point. The point was that moringa thrived precisely where other crops failed. Minimum annual rainfall requirements sit at 250 millimeters. It tolerates temperatures exceeding 40 degrees Celsius. It grows in sandy, loamy, even degraded soils that would starve other plants. When drought came and corn withered, when monsoons failed, and rice paddies cracked, moringa kept producing. Its deep taproot pulled moisture from depths other roots could not reach. In parts of West Africa, moringa leaves appeared at the end of the dry season when no other green vegetables could survive. Families depended on it during the hunger months between harvests. This was emergency food built into the landscape itself, and it asked for almost nothing in return. Just sun and time and a chance to grow. So why didn't it? The answer lies not in the plant, but in the systems built around food. Fresh moringa leaves spoil quickly. Within a day or two of harvest, they wilt and lose nutritional potency. They cannot sit in warehouses for months. They do not survive long shipping routes across oceans. Industrial food systems were built for durability. Crops that could be harvested by machine, stored in silos, transported in containers, and sold months later in distant markets. Wheat fit that model. Corn fit that model. Soybeans fit that model. Moringa did not. Moringa leaves were too delicate, too local, too dependent on being eaten soon after picking. There was no infrastructure to move fresh moringa from a village in Senegal to a grocery store in London. No refrigerated trucks waiting at harvest time. No processing plants designed for its tender leaves. And so the plant that fed millions quietly remained where it grew, overlooked by the supply chains that dictated what the world considered real food. The economics of distance erased the economics of nutrition. What could not travel far was not considered valuable. But where moringa failed in the global supply chain, it suddenly flourished in another form entirely. The solution to moringa's fragility was simple. Remove the water, dry the leaves, grind them into powder, and seal the powder in capsules or bags. Suddenly, moringa could travel. It could sit on shelves for months, and it could be sold at a profit. By the 2000s, moringa powder appeared in health food stores across North America and Europe. Labels promised ancient wisdom, miracle nutrients, and natural energy. Influencers posed with green smoothies. Wellness blogs ranked it among the top superfoods. Prices climbed accordingly. A tree that grew free in backyards became a premium product marketed to consumers searching for wellness. The irony was lost on almost everyone. The plant survived, but it survived as a commodity, stripped of its context. Families who once harvested leaves for breakfast now saw those same leaves processed, packaged, and sold back to wealthier populations at prices they could not afford. The knowledge remained, but the access shifted dramatically, and not everyone benefited from that shift. A food that required no money became a product that required plenty. The communities that had sustained moringa for millennia were written out of the story told on supplement labels. The marginalization of moringa followed a familiar pattern. During colonial eras, agricultural policy across Africa and Asia favored export crops. Cotton, coffee, cacao, and sugar generated revenue for colonial powers. Subsistence crops that fed local populations received almost no institutional support. A tree that grew without purchased inputs required no fertilizer contracts and could not be controlled by distant markets, had no place in colonial economics. Official agricultural programs promoted crops that could be shipped to European ports. Moringa stayed in backyards, invisible to the ledgers that determined what mattered. After independence, the pattern continued under different names. Development programs emphasized calorie-dense staples and cash crops. International aid focused on rice and wheat. Research funding flowed to soybeans and genetically modified varieties. By comparison, moringa received almost nothing. What could not be industrialized was labeled backward. What could not be exported was labeled unprofitable. The tree that outperformed imported vegetables in nutrition simply disappeared from conversations about feeding the world. The conversation is changing. Rising rates of micronutrient deficiency are forcing institutions to reconsider what they ignored for generations. Organizations like Church World Service began promoting moringa cultivation in Senegal in the late 1990s. Health workers trained to use moringa powder saw malnourished children recover. Nursing mothers reported increased milk production. The program called Mama Africa has planted over 16 million moringa trees across Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Malawi. The Hunger Project developed community nurseries in Benin where families grow moringa and process it locally. Permaculture movements in Europe and North America now teach moringa cultivation in tropical and subtropical climates. Researchers are testing moringa as a fortifier for infant foods in regions where stunting affects nearly a third of children. The tree is returning, not through industrial agriculture, but through the same pathways it always traveled. Backyard by backyard, village by village. Wherever someone plants a seed and waits 60 days for the first harvest. Moringa did not vanish because it failed. It vanished because it succeeded without fitting the systems that determined success. A plant that grows without expensive inputs cannot generate recurring revenue. A food that spoils quickly cannot support long supply chains. A crop that anyone can grow cannot be monopolized or patented. These were not failures of moringa. They were failures of imagination in systems that measured value only in profit. The tree kept growing. In the yards of families who never stopped eating its leaves, in the hedgerows of villages that never received agricultural extension services, in the refugee camps where aid workers discovered that local plants outperformed imported supplements. The science was always there, the calcium was always there, the iron was always there. What changed was that the world finally started paying attention to what communities had known for 4,000 years. The future of nutrition may not arrive in capsules shipped across oceans. It may already be growing, waiting in the soil, ready for anyone willing to plant it.